Welcome back to Freedom Friday, the podcast where we uncover counter narratives of faith, hope, and resilience through the power of God's presence among all people everywhere. Today we journey into Exodus chapter 2, and we explore a story often overlooked, but oh so rich with revelation. The chapter introduces us to one of the most remarkable individuals in the Old Testament, Jethro, priest of Midian, and we look at the role he would play in the deliverance of Israel from Egyptian slavery. So let's begin in Exodus chapter 2 and verse 15. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from the presence of Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. So what is the matter Pharaoh heard about which led him to try to kill Moses, his own adopted grandson and prince of Egypt? Moses had killed an Egyptian who was mistreating a Hebrew slave. We know the story. And no matter his position, Moses was not an Egyptian. And for him to kill one meant he had to die. Therefore, he had no choice but to escape for his life. And so he ends up in Midian. But his escape is more than an act of escape. It's the beginning of divine preparation. But let's not rush past Midian too quickly. While scholars continue to debate its precise location, most scholars place it northeast of the Arabian Peninsula on the eastern shore of the Red Sea. Yet for us today, the location is less critical than the people. The Cushites, black-skinned people long indigenous to Northeast Africa. Let's read the words of Muhammad Abdullahi, author in the Encyclopedia of African History. He writes, "For as long as recorded history is available for the region, the Cushites have been an indigenous people of Northeast Africa. Yet, their story is often left out. Eurocentric narratives historically diminished or confused Cushite identity, even describing them as black Caucasians or mixed race people of outside invaders. But the scriptural record, God's own word, contradicts this. It identifies Cushites not as outsiders, but as central figures in the redemptive story." The prophet Habakkuk writes, "I saw the tents of Cushan on the distress. The tent curtains of the land of Midian were trembling." So here Cushan and the land of Midian are used interchangeably. It's a frequent Old Testament way of saying they are one and the same. Cushan is a derivative of Cush. An African-American historian, William Leo Hansberry, which we have quoted before, reminds us, no matter how confusing a passage may be, designations derived from Cush, like Cushan, Cushite, or Cushi, are historically connected with black-skinned people. So why does this matter? Because Moses, the future deliverer of Israel, didn't meet just anyone in Midian. He met someone who already knew the God of Israel. So we have a powerful scripturally supported conclusion. Midian was a Cushite land, and the priest Moses meets there, Jethro, also known as Ruel or Hobab, was a Cushite priest, and he worshipped Yahweh. Now back to Moses. He sits by the well, not by accident. You see, in ancient desert cultures, the well was the place to meet people. Everybody had to go to the well to get water. And sure enough, 7 women arrived to water their sheep. Moses, trained as a warrior in Egypt, had to defend them from harassment from their male counterparts. When their father hears the story, he invites this Egyptian stranger to dinner. Does that sound familiar? Yes, think of Abraham welcoming strangers who turned out to be angels. Hospitality matters in the desert. And so Moses ends up in the home of Jethro and marries one of his daughters, Zipporah. We studied her story a few weeks ago. And he spends 40 years learning from this Cushite priest. Pause and think about that for a moment. God didn't send Moses to a Hebrew elder to learn Yahweh's ways. He sent him to Jethro, a Midianite, a Cushite, who was already leading his own people in the worship of Yahweh. Why? Because although Moses was nursed as a baby by a Hebrew mother, he was raised in Pharaoh's household as Pharaoh's adopted grandson, trained in the ways of Osiris, Horus, and Amun. He was a prince of Egypt. He needed a complete spiritual re-education before he could lead God's people. And who does God use for this sacred work? Jethro, priest of Midian. And Jethro doesn't disappear after the Exodus, you know. He's not finished. He returns to Moses after they left Egypt, bringing Zipporah and the couple's 2 sons. They had to turn back to Midian when Moses went on to Egypt. He rejoices in God's deliverance. And then, listen carefully, as a priest, he leads Moses and the elders of Israel in offering a sacrifice to Yahweh. I want to read about it. It's a few verses, but I think it's worth reading verbatim. Exodus 18, 9 to 12. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. He said, "Praise be to the Lord, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know," he affirmed, "that the Lord is greater than all other gods. Yahweh is greater than all other gods, for he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly." Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. Some commentators have wrongfully dismissed Jethro as a pagan priest, but nothing in Scripture supports that. Quite the opposite. Everything we read shows that he knew, honored, and worshipped Yahweh. He led the Hebrew elders in offering of sacrifices even before the Hebrew priesthood was established. He rejoiced to hear of Yahweh's deliverance of his people, and he gave a ringing testimony of his belief that Yahweh was the God of all gods. So again I ask, would God have sent his chosen deliverer to spend 40 years learning from an idol worshiper, a pagan worshiper? Absolutely not. On the same occasion of his visit with Moses, by the way, Jethro gave his son-in-law critical advice on leadership that shaped the judicial structure of Israel. His recommendations helped Moses reorganize the leadership structure that transformed the Hebrews from a group of former slaves into a nation. Finally, remember the incident when Miriam and Aaron challenged Moses because of his Cushite wife? Some say this was a different woman, but the Bible doesn't support that. Zipporah, daughter of Jethro, is repeatedly identified as Moses' wife, and Jethro is just as frequently referred to as his father-in-law. There's no mention anywhere of a second wife. Miriam's objection wasn't theological, it was racial. So here's the truth we proclaim on this Freedom Friday. Jethro the Midianite, a black priest of Yahweh, was the father-in-law of Moses, Israel's deliverer. And he, with his daughter Zipporah, played essential roles in the formation of the people of God. This isn't a side note. This is the divine design in action. It is a powerful and inescapable affirmation of the place of this Cushite priest and many others like him in the unfolding of the redemption story. So, my friends, never downplay your importance in God's redemptive plan, whatever your color, class, race, or nationality. You may feel small, you may feel overlooked, but your faithfulness, your presence, your yes to God might shape a legacy far beyond what you could ever imagine. If you would like to continue receiving new counter narratives of faith, hope, and resilience, subscribe to the podcast, like and share them with others. Until next week then, stay faithful, stay free, and keep walking in the light of God's redemptive power. This is Freedom Friday, where we tell the whole story